So, hello, intrepid Dharma practitioners. We're going to chew some more dry bones today. So this is our intention class. I think everyone here, I know, and you all know this is the right class. You haven't joined something unknowingly. So we're going to begin with some prayers, which Karen is going to put up some sort of formal prayers that hopefully, if we were really accomplished, we would be able to simply, on the basis of reciting these prayers, generate the intended states of mind, refuge and bodhicitta and so forth. So you remember that refuge has two causes. One of the causes is some kind of fear or, fear of suffering in cyclic existence, fear of not being able to help other sentient beings that are in cyclic existence and so forth, and a faith in the objects of refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, as being able to eliminate that fear or that problem for you. So thinking of that, we say, I go for refuge.
I go for refuge
until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Those first two lines are the Mahayana refuge. It's a Mahayana refuge because you say, I take refuge until I'm enlightened. And one of the elements here is the Supreme Assembly, meaning the Bodhisattva, Arya Assembly. And then the last two lines are the generation of bodhicitta. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings. And then as a condensation of all the methods of purification and
You're muted, George.
How did I become muted? I must have, can you hear me? Now we're okay. Okay, I'm very sorry. As a condensation of all the methods of collecting merit and purifying negative karma, we offer the mandala to the omniscient mind, our primordial guru. By offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, is referring to the Madhyamaka, our primordial guru. From the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain, send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma. It means the vast referring to the explanation of conventional truth and the profound explanation about the ultimate truth of emptiness. Please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay. So we're going to begin with a little meditation practice, and not just practice, but to try to set a motivation for the class, sort of like the impetus. The different kinds of motivation. There's a motivation that comes before, and there's a motivation that accompanies whatever practice you're doing. Both are important, but what is even more important is the initial motivation, Like say if you're going to wash the dishes, if you think, I'm going to wash these dishes thinking to, eliminate, just like I'm eliminating the spaghetti from the plate, eliminate the delusions from all sentient beings' minds. With that kind of intention, even if you, during the washing, you forget, this kind of meditation, it has that kind of benefit. Or if you're making prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, if beforehand you set an initial motivation that you're doing this in order to purify negativities of your mind so that you can, be a better person, so that you don't harm other sentient beings because of your negativities, and that in so doing you can become a Buddha to benefit sentient beings, then even if your mind is distracted when you're making prostrations, due to that initial motivation, the whole activity that you thought of, I'm going to do 35 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 prostrations, all of that becomes virtuous by the force of your initial motivation. So let's try to set an initial motivation for listening to the class. Sit comfortably, relax your body, relax your mind. Put your attention on your respiration. When you see it, hold it in mindfulness to the exclusion of everything else. Not controlling it, just watching it. Try to apply some squeezing attention, your mind just watching the breathing, letting go of other thoughts. Then recognize that it's your mental consciousness that's being aware of the breathing via the sense consciousness, let's say the body consciousness that's aware of that also. Let go of your attention to the breathing. Just watch your mental consciousness. If you have pain, your mental consciousness may still be dwelling on that physical pain, maybe headache or footache or whatever. If you're annoyed, angry, your mental consciousness may be involved in that state of anger or attachment or giddiness, happiness. Whatever state is there, whether you're thinking about something or you're recognizing the presence of afflictions to your mind, or even the presence of virtuous mental factors, faith, and so forth, they're all arising within the clear light nature of your mind. Your mind, your mental consciousness, is an impermanent phenomena, changing moment by moment, of a different nature than form. And it has this unique quality of being clear and knowing that distinguishes it. It's kind of defining characteristic. The clarity here we're pointing out particularly means this conventional clear light nature of the mind. The fact that the mind is not one nature with the delusions. They are adventitious phenomena that arise due to causes and conditions, and they don't stain the mind. Even if you've been bad, and you've been told you were bad, your mind is not bad. Looking between the thoughts, seeing the quiet, seeing the spaciousness and openness of the mind, this clear light nature can begin to be cognized by your mental consciousness. It's not something that has a shape or color. It's something that's known individually by your own mind, by the eye of wisdom, the EYE eye. Instead of your two physical eyes, we say the wisdom eye. This is our special resource. When you think about it, we always have this clear light nature of the mind. When things go bad, you can recognize that we have the potential to overcome our unhappiness about the situation. Oh, of course, you can meditate on impermanence and everything. You can meditate on other things, but just to see that we don't have to respond in set ways, old ways. We can respond because our mind has this clear light nature. We can respond like a bodhisattva, emulate the practice, the activities of a Buddha. This is our conventional Buddha nature. And the fact that we can observe it and recognize it now and rejoice about it is due to the fact of having this auspicious moment, this life of leisure and endowment that the Buddha talked about so many times in his teachings. To recognize this moment as having this very special, auspicious meaning of being able to practice the Dharma, unlike the states of a hell being or a hungry ghost or an animal or the long-lived gods. although we can be temporarily flummoxed by, pain or tragedy or whatever, we can recognize that we can change that situation. We can change our response. We can develop good qualities and eliminate our faults. Because of this life of leisure and endowment that we have. And this has come about because of our practice in previous lives, where we created the causes for this. A life of leisure and endowment and an auspicious moment like this doesn't come about simply by chance. Generally through the causes of morality, previous lives, abstaining from negative actions consciously, and being generous, along with the other perfections, but particularly brought together by the power of prayer, aspiration in the past, that we might be able to do better, that we could become a beacon for other beings, not just with conventional knowledge, how to do things in the world, but to lead them out of suffering into everlasting happiness. Taking cognizance of all living beings, those that you can perceive, those that you only have heard about, even extraterrestrial life, if it exists. I think all of them, whatever form we have, whatever form they have, other beings have, we have had that same form in the past. We've been insects, we've been hell beings, we've been animals, we've been gods, we've been humans without resources, we've been wealthy, famed, of family lineage and so forth. And other times we've been the opposite. All these beings, whatever form they might take, have been humans in the past and have been our mother numberless times. And in so doing, they have been depthlessly kind to us in every life. Thinking of our own situation, being caught in cyclic existence, recognizing that all mother sentient beings are in exactly the same situation, wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to be happy, but never being able to effect that perfectly. I think I would like to be able to repay the kindness of all my mothers. To do so, it's not enough just to give them some money, some temporary happiness, good meal, room and board. Or it's not enough simply to teach them techniques for this life alone, although that can be very useful in the right circumstances. I need to be able to lead them faultlessly out of suffering into everlasting happiness. I need to become a Buddha in order to do that. I need to accumulate the collection of wisdom and collection of merit that bring about the bodies of the Buddha. The Dharmakaya, the collection of wisdom being the substantial cause of that, or cooperative cause of that, and the collection of merit being the cooperative cause of the Rupakayas, the form bodies. Substantial causes of those two bodies are the consciousness and its mounted wind, the subtlemost wind being the substantial cause that turns into the form bodies, and the clear light nature of our mind being the substantial cause that turns into the Dharmakaya. So for that reason, to accumulate those two collections, in order to become Buddha, to benefit sentient beings, I'm going to participate in the class today, listening attentively, contemplating, meditating when possible. Meditating means holding single-pointedly when we have some clear insight into something. I'm going to do that for the sake of achieving enlightenment, for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. How are we doing? Anyone have a question or observation? I turned my head away for a minute. Did anyone have anything? Okay. Okay. I'd like to see the gallery. So, okay, there we go. So, no questions from last time? Okay. So, we've been talking recently about the first ground, right? That's the context. And there's a famous verse in the Karikas, in Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Karika, about the first Bhumi Bodhisattva outshining the hearers and solitary realizers in terms of merit. And in the commentary about that, it's mentioned that the first level Bodhisattva doesn't excel or outshine the hearers and solitary realizers by wisdom. That doesn't take place. The Bodhisattvas don't outshine the hearers and solitary realizers in terms of intellect or wisdom until the seventh Bhumi. And it was in that context that this discussion about the hearers and solitary realizers necessarily realizing emptiness comes about, right? You kind of see the situation. On the sixth Bhumi, the Bodhisattvas, when they have the special practice of the perfection of wisdom, we've only mentioned this incidentally. So mainly we're talking about the fact that there's a quotation from the Ten Bhumi Sutra that the Bodhisattvas on the seventh ground excel, outshine the hearers and solitary realizers by wisdom for the first time, even though on the sixth ground, right before the seventh ground, the Bodhisattvas have a special absorption of cessation that is unique, is a sort of uncommon absorption of cessation. So the way the word absorption of cessation comes about is it's a play on this word nirodha samutpatti. Where's Paul? I can't see Paul. Oh, there. Paul, how do you usually translate nirodha samutpatti?
Samutpatti. Well, nirodha would be the cessation.
Right.
Samutpatti would be the perfect arising of cessation, something like that. I'm trying to remember what the Tibetan is.
Samapatti. In Tibetan, it's Gokpen Yongjuk.
Gokpe Nyongju. Oh, then that would be like absorption in cessation.
Right. So
that.
some
Okay.
people translate samapati as trance.
Mhm.
So generally, there's this kind of state of mind called nirodha samapati, or in Tibetan, Gokpe Nyongju, that is a state that's mentioned in the Hinayana scriptures all the time. Very, very famous. It comes about after having attained the first concentration of the form realm, the second, the third, the fourth, the first formless absorption, first formless concentration, second, third, fourth. And then from there, it's possible to reach a ninth stage called nirodha samapati. Actually, usually we call these concentrations, like the first form concentration, they're called dhyanas, right? Or in Tibetan, samten. These are the first samten, the second samten, the third samten, and then the formless concentrations and so forth. The word samapati, it covers all of them. Also, there are 8 samapatis, but there's a ninth samapati. We wouldn't say a ninth dhyana, but this state in which one is able to cease feeling and discrimination. And it's as though the consciousness stops. That's what, in the Hinayana scriptures, the word cessation is mainly talking about a cessation of consciousness. There's a book that maybe some of you might have run across, I'm sure Paul has seen before, on being mindless. Are you familiar with that, Paul? By Paul Griffiths, University of Chicago now. Or I'm not sure where he is now. He was there. Talking about, investigating this nirodha samapati. So that is a state that's not being talked about here when we talk about the absorption in cessation that takes place on the 6th bhumi and on the 7th bhumi, sort of a special absorption in cessation. It's talking about the bodhisattva's ability to have a direct realization of emptiness, and the mind merged with that in a very special way, in an uncommon way that wasn't present on the 1st bhumi, where he or she has a direct realization of emptiness, and the mind is merged with it. But there's something special on the 6th, and on the 7th bhumi, the bodhisattva is able to enter into and emerge from that, what is also called nirodha samapati, or something very similar in words to that, is able to enter into and emerge from that in one thought instant. So that's why the 7th level bodhisattva excels the hearers and solitary realizers in terms of wisdom. So that's all what we've talked about in the past, right? So now, where we left off before, so we're using that as a starting point, that this indicates if it's not until the 7th bhumi that the bodhisattvas excel the hearers and realizers, solitary realizers in terms of wisdom, that means the hearers and solitary realizers, they must have realized emptiness. Otherwise, the 1st bhumi bodhisattva would excel them in wisdom, right? Stephen's nodding. That makes sense, right, Stephen? If the first bhumi bodhisattva doesn't excel them by wisdom, that means they must have that similar kind of wisdom to the bodhisattva. So that's the starting point now for Lama Tsongkhapa's long, you could say, digression, sort of like, analysis of this fact and trying to set it into, well-organized form so that others can realize this. Because in general, all of the other Buddhist tenets below Prasangika, to some extent, say that it is possible for someone to become an Arya and to become an Arhat without realizing emptiness. It's only Prasangika says that that's baloney. To become an Arya, to become an Arhat, to have achieved nirvana, you have to realize the lack of inherent existence, the emptiness of inherent existence. Okay, so that's where we've been talking about. So, and once again, I didn't put down the page number, but we're going to start from this statement. Misled by the phrase view of emptiness here, even some Indian masters assert that this refers to the view realizing suchness. So this is a commenting on a line from the Pramanavartika. Who knows what page that is in the written text?
It's page 83.
Page 83. Okay, so it says, in line with this, the exposition of valid cognition, it's the Pramanavartika by Dharmakirti, says, one is freed through the view of emptiness. The other contemplations support that. So what's that talking about? When we talked about achieving the state of an Arya, becoming an Arya being, usually it's said in the Hinayana scriptures, it says that one becomes an Arya by seeing the 16 aspects by realizing the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So the truth of suffering has 4 aspects. Truth of origination of suffering has 4. Cessation has 4. Path has 4. So there's 16 aspects. So here it's saying of those 16 aspects, one is freed. Usually it says that you realize those in the Hinayana, and in the Pramanavartika is pointing out that actually what it means is that one of them, the view of emptiness, is the one that you're going to be freed from. You're going to become an Arya as a result of. You're going to be able to become freed from the delusions and achieve arhatship through. The other 15, when it says the other contemplations, the other meditations, and there's 16, one of them is the prime one. All the others are meant to support that. A little bit similar to like when in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara on the chapter on wisdom, Shantideva says all of the other perfections, the first 5 perfections, were all meant to bring about this, the perfection of wisdom. A little bit similar kind of statement. This is the most important thing, the view of emptiness. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, misled by the phrase view of emptiness, that's what Pramanavartika was saying, that's what Dharmakirti was saying. Even some Indian masters, and Jeffrey points out that means Shantarakshita, the famous Lama who came to Tibet, Kamalashila, Jatari, Prajna Karagupta, and so forth, mistook the term the view of emptiness and asserted it to be a viewing consciousness cognizing emptiness, suchness. But this is not so. Okay, Jimpa says, misled by the phrase the view of emptiness here, even some Indian masters, as I just mentioned, assert that this refers to the view realizing suchness. Remember, suchness is a synonym of emptiness, right? So they're thinking that, what's his name? Dharmakirti was saying that you have to realize emptiness here. That's not what he was saying. Jimpa's translation says, this is decidedly not the meaning. Here, the view of emptiness refers to viewing, to the view realizing the person as empty of being a self-sufficient, substantial reality, self-supporting, substantially existent person. Remember, that is, generally in Prasangika, we say that's the gross selflessness of persons, right? By realizing that, Prasangika would say, you can't become an Arya being. If that's all you've realized, if you've realized that that's very beneficial, your other delusions are subdued and so forth, but it will not cease any of the delusions. So Jimpa says, translating Lama Tsongkhapa, I say Jimpa says, Lama Tsongkhapa says, this is decidedly not the meaning. What Dharmakirti was voicing here is the Hinayana view of this. Here it refused to here what Dharmakirti was talking about is referring to the view, realizing the person as empty, being empty of self-sufficient substantial reality, being a self-supporting substantial existent person. Then he goes on to say, such a path cannot eliminate the seeds of the afflictions, even though that's what Dharmakirti was saying, right? Dharmakirti was writing that from the, maybe from the Yogacara point of view, maybe a little bit Sautrantika point of view. In his Pramanavartika, there's both systems are kind of indicated in different ways. Such a path cannot eliminate the seeds of the afflictions, but it can temporarily relieve manifest afflictions. It can temporarily stop the afflictions. In the Tibetan, this is Reshik Gok Nute. Nu means able. Gok means to cease or stop. Reshik means temporarily. So what it means is that, as we've talked about before, let's say when we talked about remember we talked about mundane and supramundane vipassana. Don, do you remember what supramundane vipassana is and mundane vipassana? I might have even asked you last week.
Well, supermundane would be those who have reached the state of meditative state of seeing, and mundane would be prior to that.
Okay, you could say something like that. So mundane vipassana means the kind of vipassana that's analyzing the defects of the lower realm and the benefits of the upper realm. Say if you're in the desire realm right now, we're in the desire realm, right? We're human beings in the desire realm. We're not form realm beings, but we can recognize the benefits of the first form concentration, the form realm, and the defects of the desire realm. Here, we're under the influence of craving, desires, and getting angry and so forth. And the first form concentration doesn't have those delusions. So that's very attractive. I'd like to have that state of mind. So analyzing that way with vipassana, having first developed tranquil abiding and then beginning to analyze in this way, one can achieve the first concentration. In so doing, you have separated yourself or stopped the delusions of the desire realm in your consciousness. When you achieve that first form concentration, your mind has stopped the delusions of the desire realm. The word is gokpa, is ceased, but it's not ceased in the way that when we talk about supramundane vipassana causing the delusions to cease so that they'll never come back. These are just subdued, submerged, pressed down, okay? Such a path, here he's referring not just to the mundane vipassana, but he's talking about a path that it has realized the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. That's similar to the meditation of mundane vipassana, where you meditate on the faults of the lower realm and the benefits of the upper realm. Such a path cannot eliminate the seeds of the afflictions, but it can temporarily relieve or stop manifest afflictions. Making sense? No? Oh, okay. Richard, what do you think? You have to unmute, Richard.
I'm still not clear about the difference between mundane and supramundane vipassana.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. So mundane, when we talk about vipassana, mainly what vipassana means from a sutra point of view is this ability to, from the standpoint of already having achieved tranquil abiding, calm abiding, shamatha, fully concentrated mind. Usually in a fully concentrated mind, you're not analyzing. You're just holding one thing. Like say if you visualize the Buddha's body, or you visualize Tara or something like that, or you visualize yourself as Yamataka or something, that can be just an object of your development of shamatha, concentration. To be able to enhance that, well, within concentration, if you wanted to have a concentration, shamatha, on emptiness or on selflessness, you could have read about it beforehand, thought about it, and then just concentrate on that. But generally with shamatha alone, you're not analyzing emptiness. So with shamatha alone, without the union of shamatha and vipassana, without the penetrative insight, you don't have a wisdom consciousness as vibrant at that time. If within that concentration on emptiness, you analyze, let's say, the body, or say the person, me, I, George, am not inherently one with the aggregates. I'm not inherently different than the aggregates, through the 4-point analysis. That kind of analysis is what's called supramundane vipassana. It's called supramundane because it leads you to the state of being an Arya, beyond the world. Mundane here means worldly, right? Beyond the world. So you can become an Arya being through the supramundane vipassana. You can't become an Arya being through mundane vipassana. Mundane vipassana is one that's not taking cognizance of emptiness. It's simply seeing worldly sense, the defects of the desire realm, the benefits of the first concentration. Or once you've achieved the first concentration, the defects of the first concentration, the benefits of the second concentration compared to it. Through that mundane vipassana, you can submerge the delusions of the first concentration and achieve the second. And likewise, going up, all the way up to the peak of cyclic existence. Those kinds of methods, wisdom methods, analysis, are called mundane vipassana. Leaving those aside, you don't even have to do that. Right from the beginning, you can apply your mind. Once you have shamatha, you can apply your mind to supramundane vipassana. And instead of analyzing the defects of the first, the desire realm, the benefits of the first, you can use your analysis to analyze whether phenomena inherently exist or not. That's called supramundane vipassana. Does that make sense, Richard? Okay. So the text continues. For if we admit, as was stated above, that the path that compares realms of existence in terms of levels of refinement, this is just what I'm talking about, is his way of translating this mundane vipassana, looking at the lower realm as defective, the realm above it that I'd like to achieve as having refined qualities. The path that compares realms of existence, let's say the desire realm, the first concentration, second, in terms of levels of refinement, one being better than the other, a path shared with non-Buddhists, because non-Buddhists, Hindus, others also have that ability to achieve the various concentrations, even to the peak of cyclic existence, to the fourth formless realm. They have that ability, and within their scriptures and yogic methods, there are methods to achieve these. For if we admit, as was stated above, that the path that compares realms of existence in terms of levels of refinement, is talking about mundane vipassana, a path shared with non-Buddhists, if we admit that that can eliminate manifest afflictions, but eliminate here means just stopping them, subduing them. It doesn't mean that they're eliminated completely. You can get to the top, the peak of cyclic existence, and in your mind, in that state, you have stopped, subdued, suppressed all of the delusions of the desire realm, the four concentrations, and the four formless absorptions. Other than the peak of existence itself, you still have those delusions present in your mind. So that path, such a path cannot eliminate the seeds of the afflictions. That is, meditating on the emptiness of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, but it can temporarily relieve or stop manifest afflictions. For if we admit, as was stated above, that the path that compares realms of existence in terms of levels of refinement, a path shared with non-Buddhists, can eliminate or relieve or stop manifest afflictions below the peak of existence, then there is no question that the path referred to above can also temporarily relieve manifest afflictions. It doesn't mean it ceases them in the sense of the path of seeing. In the path of seeing, you see certain delusions so they'll never come back again. And on the path of meditation, you cease other delusions, innate delusions, so that they'll never come back again. But the meditation on mundane vipassana and the meditation on the emptiness or the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, neither of those can cease the delusion so they'll never come back, but they can cause them to be stopped, to be suppressed, so they're not manifest. There's still the seeds of those delusions there. But these meditations, let's say the meditation on the lack of self-supporting, substantially existent person, can even subdue the delusions of the peak of cyclic existence, the fourth formless absorption, which the mundane vipassana can't. Let me see if anyone's following me here. So mundane vipassana, once you get to you achieve the fourth formless absorption, fourth form realm, nothing at all, it's called, right? Once you achieve that, you still have a consciousness with some manifest delusions, the manifest delusions of the fourth concentration. There's no concentration above that with mundane vipassana to meditate on, to subdue those delusions. With the path that meditates on the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, that can even subdue the delusions of the fourth concentration, of the fourth formless absorption. David, are you following? I'm looking, you're right next to Paul's image on my computer screen. I say, which one of them is understanding what I'm saying? David, are you understanding? Okay. So at any rate, neither of those methods, whether it be mundane vipassana or the meditation on the emptiness of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, neither of them can cease any of the delusions so they'll never come back again. It can only cause them to be, the manifest delusions to be ceased or stopped. But you still have the seeds of those delusions. Nadine, is making sense? Okay. Okay. Ida? Okay. Donnie, what are you thinking? You're okay? Okay. Anna? Look right. Yeah, okay, okay. I'll believe you. So then there is no question that the path referred to above can also temporarily relieve manifest afflictions. The path that's being referred to here is the path that Dharmakirti was mentioning in the Pramadavartika, that you meditate on the emptiness, but what he was referring to by emptiness is the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. The afflictions here in the phrase temporarily relieve manifest afflictions. That was in the quotation, right? No, where was that?
From the sentence before.
The sentence before, yeah. Can eliminate manifest, temporarily relieve manifest afflictions. That's what Lama Khapa was saying. He's referring back to that statement. The afflictions here in the phrase temporarily relieve or stop manifest afflictions are the afflictions characterized by objects and aspects as defined in the two Abhidharma systems. Oh boy. Okay. So what are the two Abhidharma systems? We talk about the Hinayana Abhidharma and the Mahayana Abhidharma. The Hinayana Abhidharma is the Abhidharma Kosha by Vasubandhu, and the Mahayana Abhidharma is the Abhidharma Samuchaya by his brother Asanga. Neither of them are talking about actual emptiness, though. They're talking about this system kind of common to the two, that the afflictions can be, the afflictions that are being talked about are ones that can be subdued by meditation. By subdued, I mean just pressed down by meditation on the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. Neither of those, both of those systems say, they say that the seeds of those delusions can be eliminated by that, but in reality, from the Prasangika point of view, they cannot. Neither of those meditations, neither of those systems can eliminate the seeds. The afflictions here in the phrase temporarily relieve manifest afflictions. Okay, afflictions is what we call klesha, delusions, right? Anger, attachment, and so forth. They are the afflictions characterized by objects and aspects as defined in the two Abhidharma systems. Jeffrey translates that. They are those whose objects of observation, in Tibetan we say mikpa, alambara, those whose objects of observation and subjective aspects are explained in the Hinayana and Mahayana Abhidharmas, and not those involving the conception of inherent existence. They're not talking about neither of those in the Hinayana Abhidharma, the Mahayana Abhidharma. We call it Mahayana Abhidharma because it was written from the Chittamatra point of view, which is a Mahayana system, right? But it's not the Mahayana Abhidharma is not talking about it from the point of view of the Prasangika, even from the Madhyamaka. It's talking about it from the Chittamatra point of view. In regard to the afflictions not mentioned in the Abhidharma systems, are there other afflictions? In the Abhidharma Kosha, we talk about all the delusions, right? We talk about, 51 or other numbers of delusions, maybe 48 or something. In regard to the afflictions not mentioned in the Abhidharma systems, such as the grasping at true existence, that in Chandrakirti's tradition is said to be a form of afflicted ignorance. Okay, what's that saying? Who's been following along here? Stephen, can you explain that?
Thank you, Venerable George. Grasping at true existence, a form of afflicted ignorance. So this is the more subtle ignorance. It's more subtle than a self-sufficient, substantially existent self, thinking that that is existent.
Right. So say, for instance, some of the delusions are, let's say, by grasping at a self-supporting, substantially existent person, you can trigger certain kinds of delusions. There is, because that's not the subtlemost form of grasping, there are more subtle forms of delusions that are triggered by grasping at inherent existence. If you can say you realize that there is no self-supporting, substantially existent person, you've realized that authentically in your meditation. You've realized that. That itself cannot cease all of the delusions so that they'll never come back. What it can do is temporarily submerge or subdue some of the delusions. What's the reason that it can't eliminate them? Is because still, by simply realizing the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, you still have in your mind a subtler form of grasping that the person, although not self-supporting, substantially existent, is still inherently existent. It's existing from its own side. In regard to the afflictions not mentioned in the Abhidharma system, such as grasping a true existence, that in Chandrakirti's tradition is said to be a form of afflicted ignorance, as well as other afflictions defined from the standpoint consisting both of cognitive and non-cognitive forms, even their manifest levels cannot be eliminated by the path described above. What's he talking about, cognitive and non-cognitive? Jeffrey Hopkins translates this: these paths also cannot abandon the view and non-view afflictions. This is what Jimp is calling cognitive and non-cognitive, that accord with the conception of the existence and differ from the mode of explanation in the Hinayana and Mahayana Abhidharmas. So, cannot abandon the view and non-view afflictions. So remember, when we talk about the klesha, the root klesha, the root delusions, right? How many root delusions are there? Mikhail, do you know? Mikhail?
5 or 6, not sure.
Ah, you don't know.
No.
Ah, okay. So Donnie's asking, what page in Hopkins? I think we're still on that same page, right?
154.
154? Oh, okay. Ida, how many delusions are there? How many root delusions are there?
There's 6 root delusions, I believe.
6 root delusions, okay.
Yes.
Mikhail, pay attention.
Attachment, anger, pride, ignorance, afflicted doubt, and afflicted views. Afflicted view, which has more.
Which has 5 parts, right? So yeah, usually I'd like to put it. I'd like to start with ignorance, attachment, anger. We usually call the 3 poisonous minds, right? Ignorance, attachment, anger, right? And then afflicted doubt, not just ordinary doubt, like whether I should eat Cheetos or something else. Afflicted doubt and pride. Those are the 5 root delusions, or let's say, non-view delusions. And then the sixth delusion is, the sixth affliction is called afflicted view. And so, let's say delusions which are views. So there are five, the first five are non-views, and then the next five are called views. They're called a view of the transitory collection and so forth. There are five views, right? So, such as in regard to the afflictions not mentioned in the Abhidharma systems. In the Abhidharma systems, they don't talk about, well, let's say, such as, in regard to the afflictions not mentioned in the Abhidharma system, such as the grasping at true existence, Abhidharma system doesn't talk about grasping at true existence as an affliction. Why not? Do you know, Rachel, why is Abhidharma system not consider grasping at true existence an affliction?
I'm not sure, Venerable George, but since it's a Hinayana or a Chittamatra view, it's not looking at the prasangika subtlety of the inherent existence.
Yeah.
In the first place, but I don't know otherwise.
Well,
what
for
reason.
them, it's not an affliction. It's true. For them, phenomena are truly existent. Right? We're talking about Chittamatra, right? Not the lower Madhyamaka systems of the Svatantric Madhyamaka. There in the Madhyamaka, no phenomena is truly existent. But from the Chittamatra point of view, phenomena are truly existent. And from the Hinayana point of view, by Bhashika and Sautrantika, all phenomena are truly existent. Right? That's they say, oh, they have to truly exist. They exist, you know. Sarvastivadin is one of the subsects of the Vaibhashika, and their root tenet is that all phenomena truly exist. So, in regard to afflictions not mentioned in the Abhidharma systems, such as grasping at true existence, because they don't consider that an affliction. They consider that to be wisdom, knowing that phenomena truly exist, right? It's not an affliction for them. In regard to afflictions not mentioned in the Abhidharma systems, such as the grasping at true existence, that in Chandrakirti's tradition is said to be a form of afflicted ignorance, as well as other afflictions, defined from the standpoint consisting both of the view and non-view forms. Even their manifest levels cannot be eliminated by the path described above. Oh, yeah, so someone was talking about verbiage earlier. Maybe it was Shankar or something, you know, get lost in the words here. So what it's saying is that in these lower systems, even if we talk about the Mahayana Abhidharma, that's from the Chittamatra point of view generally, right? Maybe some other subtle types of Svatantric are included there, but generally, and in the Abhidharma Kosha of the Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, talking about them, grasping a true existence is not considered an affliction. It's a wisdom. It's knowing things actually exist. That said, there is indeed this difference. Although manifest afflictions present on the peak of existence, the peak of existence is the fourth formless absorption, right? The fourth form concentration, formless concentration. Although manifest afflictions present on the peak of existence cannot be eliminated by the mundane path, the mundane vipassana that compares realms in terms of their refinements, you know, that sees the advantages of the upper realm and the disadvantages of the lower, because there's nothing above the fourth concentration, fourth formless concentration. They can be eliminated through cultivating familiarity with the realization of the core selflessness of persons as defined above. Remember, you may remember, I just mentioned through the mundane vipassana, you cannot eliminate, you cannot suppress or subdue the delusions of the peak of cyclic existence. You can't even, you can't cease any of their seeds either. But through the meditation on the core selflessness of persons, which is going beyond that, you can suppress those delusions of the fourth formless concentration. But again, it's not ceasing them so that they'll never come back. It's just a method to, again, suppress those delusions of the fourth formless concentration. Sheila, are you following? Are you reading the newspaper there? I'm just teasing. Are you following?
I'm following, but what page are you on? Do you have a keyword?
Oh, what
You
page are we
skipped.
on, fellows?
You skipped ahead.
83 in Jimpa's book and 154 on
Oh, in
Hopkins.
Hopkins' book. Okay, so that's
No
what you were saying,
problem.
154. In
I just-
Jimpa's book, if you
okay,
have
okay.
Jimpa's book 83, Donnie.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, so with mundane vipassana, you can suppress the delusions. You can't cease any of them so they'll never come back. With the meditation on this, the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, you can suppress the delusions, even the delusions of the fourth formless absorption, but you can't cause any of them to cease in the way that they'll never come back again. That's the gist of this. Then the text continues. With these, I have explained clearly, you might not agree. With these, I have explained clearly the commentaries' statements on how paths divorced from the realization of emptiness, the realization of suchness, that are yet claimed to be antidotes against the afflictions are similar to mundane paths that trace the levels of refinement of the realms of existence, and how, like those of non-Buddhists, these paths cannot eliminate all the afflictions. What's he saying there? He's saying, with what I've just explained before, I have told you about what Chandrakirti was saying in his commentary. When he's saying the commentary, that means Chandrakirti's Bhasham, his auto commentary on the, on his Karikas. This is what Chandrakirti has said, that through the mundane vipassana and through the meditation on the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, you cannot eliminate all of the delusions. You cannot eliminate all of the afflictions. You cannot cause them so that they'll never come back again. All you can do is, you don't do anything to the seeds of those delusions, but you can cause the manifest delusions to be absent. And so, to all intents and purposes, looking at that person, relating with such a person who has meditated on mundane vipassana or the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, they might seem to be like a Buddha, an arhat. They don't seem to have any manifest delusions, but the seeds of them are still there and they can come up later. Okay? We all together? Anyone? Donnie, you have doubt? What do you think? Oh, okay. Okay. Shanka?
I was just, not a question, but I was just going to say that all this verbiage reminds me of this old Harry Belafonte song, what was it? It clear as mud and it covered the ground. And it make
Clear
me,
like mud
make
and
me head
covered the
go
ground.
round and round, right? That's right.
Okay. Harry Belafonte, bless his soul. Okay. Okay. So Up till here, this is mainly talking about Chandrakirti's explanation, quoting the Ten Bhumi Sutra and other sutras, why the hearers and solitary realizers must realize emptiness. Now, how this is also the standpoint of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. Here is how this is also the standpoint of the guide to the Bodhisattva's way, right? This is a new heading. So this is still talking about now giving more reasonings why not only Chandrakirti said that the hearers and solitary realizers realize emptiness, but Shantideva also, who is considered to be of the sort of latter Indian teachers, Chandrakirti and Shantideva, way after Nagarjuna and Aryadeva and everything, they clearly say that the hearers and solitary realizers realize emptiness. So now, what Shantideva said in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, this standpoint is also maintained by the great Bodhisattva Shantideva. His guide to the Bodhisattva's way poses the following question. Let me see how Jeffrey translates that here. So Jeffrey says, citing an objector's opinion. So what does Jimpa say here? He poses the following question. Is Shantideva is not posing the question. He's actually saying the opinion of some other opponent of the Prasangika. And that statement from the Bodhisattva Charyavatara is, it's through seeing the truths one is freed. What need is there to see emptiness? Anyone who's studied Bodhisattva Charyavatara, does that sound familiar, that verse? Very famous verse. It's not saying, this is not what Shantideva's thinking. He's thinking it is necessary to realize emptiness. He's giving from the Hinayana point of view, oh, come on. Tempa tongwe jolgyogi, tongni tongwe chishikja. Chishikja means, why bother with seeing emptiness? Tempa tongwe jolgyo, one becomes liberated by seeing the truths, the Four Noble Truths, right? And by that, it's talking about, from the Hinayana point of view of realizing the Four Noble Truths, the main one being, the aspect of empty. Empty means a lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, according to their interpretation. Nadine, are you following? Making sense?
Yes, thank you. I try to follow.
Okay. So it's through seeing the truth that one is freed. What need is there then to see emptiness? It's like that's superfluous. You can get liberation without that. So the questioner is arguing, the opponent is arguing, Shantideva is giving their opinion. One becomes free from the afflictions, the kleshas, through the path seeing the Four Noble Truths and their 16 aspects, 16 characteristics, such as impermanence. Remember, when we say such as impermanence, it's talking about the four. Generally, when you talk about the truth of suffering, it has four aspects that are always mentioned again and again: impermanence, suffering, empty, selfless. Right? So, such as impermanence. Therefore, it is not necessary to realize emptiness in order to eliminate the afflictions. This is the Hinayana opinion. In fact, they think that's wrong to realize emptiness because for them, phenomena are truly existent. Responding to such an objection, Shantideva says, the next two lines of that verse, the first two lines are the statement that, why do you have to realize emptiness? What's the use? It's enough to realize the Four Noble Truths. And Shantideva says, for the scriptures state that without this path, there is no awakening. Or as Jeffrey translates that, oops. Scriptures say that without this path, there can be no enlightenment. So what scriptures is he talking about? Talking about Mahayana sutras, right? Shantideva states here that without this path of seeing the emptiness of intrinsic existence, there is no attaining any of the three types of enlightenment. Sean, do you know the three types of enlightenment?
The Buddha, the hearers, and the solitary realizers.
So the solitary realizers realize they achieve enlightenment?
That's a type of enlightenment, I think it's considered.
Yeah. So generally, if you're familiar with Mahayana sutras, you might think enlightenment only refers to the enlightenment of a Buddha. But the achievement of nirvana, the Hinayana, let's say the Shravakas, the hearers, that's called a hearer's enlightenment. Hearer's bodhi, bodhi, right? Like bodhi tree. And the Pratika Buddha's bodhi, their enlightenment is their nirvana. That's not the samyak sam bodhi. Samyak sam means fully completed, perfect enlightenment of a Buddha. So the words sound the same, but they have different meanings, right? Shantideva states here that without this path of seeing emptiness of intrinsic existence, inherent existence, there is no attaining any of the three types of enlightenment. The arhatship of a hearer, the arhatship of a solitary realizer, or full enlightenment. None of them are possible without realizing emptiness of inherent existence. How this is stated in the scriptures is explained, and when it talks about the scriptures, it means the Mahayana scriptures, right? The Hinayana scriptures don't mention that you have to realize the emptiness of inherent existence. How this is stated in the scriptures is explained by the great commentary on the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way, which cites the Mother Sutras that speak of how there is no liberation for those who perceive real entities. So what is this talking about? The great commentary on the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way. So Bodhisattva Charyavatara has several Indian commentaries. How many, Paul, do you know how many commentaries were there? I can't remember.
I don't remember, 9 maybe?
Maybe 9, something like that. Can't remember, some number. The famous, most renowned of them is the one by, what's his name? Rajna Karagupti, what is it called?
Prajna Karamati.
Karamati. Prajna Karamati. It's called the Great Commentary. So he says here, how this is stated in the scriptures, in the Mahayana scriptures, is explained by the great commentary on the Bodhisattva Charyavatara by Prajna
Karamati.
Karamati. I was trying to look at the Tibetan of Prajna Karamati, and in Tibetan it's Sherab Jungne Bepa, which is interesting. Bepa usually means concealed or hidden or something like that, which is Mati usually means something else in Tibetan.
Wait a minute, would that be then Prajna Karagupta then? I think that
No,
would be
no, it's Prajna Karamati. Sherab Jungne Beba. Yeah. So anyway, let's look. So in his great commentary, which when the Dalai Lama teaches Bodhisattva Charyavatara, sometimes he refers to this great commentary, which cites the Mother Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So when we talk about the perfection of wisdom sutras, there are a whole bunch of them. There are 20-odd perfection of wisdom sutras in the Mahayana canon. Of those, when we talk about the mother, usually it's referring to 3 main perfection of wisdom sutras, all of which are talking about the same event expressed in different lengths. There's the 8,000 verse perfection of wisdom, the 25,000 verse, and the 100,000 verse perfection of wisdom. They're called the mothers, or the three mothers. I was going to make some joke, but I'll leave that out. So that speak of how there is no liberation in these Mother Sutras. There is no liberation, there's no freedom, there's no nirvana for those who perceive real entities. That means who are grasping at inherent existence, there's no liberation. And how from stream entry to pratika Buddhahood, stream enter of a hearer, stream enter of a pratika Buddha, all the way to the arhatship of a pratika Buddha, past, present, and future, all of these states are attained through the perfection of wisdom alone. Perfection of wisdom here means realizing that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, right? So taking the word awakening in the second line in the above quote, so what's the second line? For these scriptures state that without this path, there is no awakening. So that's the awakening that's being talked about. So taking the word awakening in the second line in the above quote, as some do, to refer only to the unexcelled awakening of a Buddha is not the meaning. It's talking about, as we said before, awakening or enlightenment or bodhi can refer to the bodhi of the Shravaka, the bodhi of the Pratika Buddha, or the bodhi of a bodhisattva, which is the full enlightenment. We say samyak sam bodhi, right? Perfect, complete Buddha enlightenment.
Venerable George.
Yes.
I think it was abbreviated. It's his name in Tibetan is Sherab Jungye Lodro. So the Jungye is translating akara. Prajna,
Yeah, that's
akara,
what
mati.
I found in I think you're right. Should be Lodro. In the Princeton Dictionary of Buddhism, that Dan Lopez,
Don Lopez, yeah.
Don Lopez. There he has Sherab Jungye Bepa, and thank you for that, because I think that's wrong. It's mati usually means
Sherab Jungye Bepa would be Prajnakara Gupta.
Yeah, so I think he's that. So I put that reference there, quoting from him, thinking I was completely wrong, thinking that mati should be Lodro. So thank you for that. So if you happen to have the communication with Don Lopez, you can tell him that his reference to Prajnakara Gupta, Karamati as having the last word Bepa is wrong.
Yeah, he loves getting those emails from me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, Smarty Pants Paul. Yeah, you can say that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So taking the word awakening in the second line above, in the above quote, as some do, to refer only to the unexcelled awakening of a Buddha, samyak sam bodhi, is not the meaning. So that means that anyone, to have any kind of achievement of nirvana or Buddhahood, you have to realize the lack of inherent existence. Then the four lines beginning, since the true monk is the root of the Dharma. So what is that talking about? That's talking about a verse that we had earlier, I think, that said the root of the teaching is monkhood. This is this is in Shantideva's text also. But even that is difficult for those whose minds apprehend inherent existence. Is that the root of this is Jeffrey's translation of that verse. This is just talking about he's just quoting here one line of that. Since the true monk is the root of the Dharma. Jeffrey translates that the root of the teaching is monkhood. but even that is hard. It's hard to pass away from suffering. In Jeffrey's translation, he adds parenthetically the meaning of this verse. The roots of the teaching are monks who have abandoned the afflictions, right? That is, foe destroyers, arhats, right? Not to mention Buddhahood. Even such monkhood is difficult, that is, impossible, if the wisdom realizing emptiness is not cultivated, because the conception of inherent existence prevents nirvana. So when it's talking about, what does it say? The true monk is the root of the Dharma. The true monk there is referring to the arhats, right? Foe destroyers, I say, the teaching is both the verbal and realized doctrine. Usually when we talk about the teachings of the Buddha Shasana, we refer to or the doctrine of the Buddha, we refer to the verbal and the realizational doctrine. So the verbal doctrine means understanding the words so that you can actually pass on the oral lineage, the lung of something. So that even if you don't understand it, if you understand the words, you don't understand the meaning, you can teach other of your disciples or other beings who, with their greater intellect, they may be able to realize. That's called the verbal doctrine. That's very, very important. Like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, always receiving lungs, oral transmissions, and being able to recite that for others. That's called upholding the verbal doctrine. Very, very important. We make prayers to be able to uphold the verbal doctrine. But the more important, ultimately, is the realizational doctrine, realizing the meaning of those words, putting that into practice. Okay, so the teaching is both the verbal and realized doctrine. Foe destroyers such as Kashyapya, Upali, Ananda, the 16 elders, the 16 arhats, and the foe destroyers present during the collection of the word are called the roots of the teaching. The collection of the word, I think that refers to the first convocation of the disciples after the Buddha died, when all of the teachings were recited again by Ananda and Upali and so forth, and Kashyapya. You know that, right? Anna, do you know that? When the Buddha died, what happened?
Isn't that Ananda had an amazing memory so that he recited a lot of those oral transitions, or
that's more or less, something like that. When the Buddha passed away, he admonished his monks they shouldn't cry and pull their hair out. The Buddha's gone. That the Dharma should be their guide. And so there was a convocation of all of the monks that were present. And originally, Ananda had not achieved arhatship yet. He was not yet an arhat. And he was I think it was Kashyapya who admonished him and said, you can't recite the sutras because you're not an arhat. So Ananda sat down in that evening and finally got past the barrier, achieved arhatship, became an arhat. And so then he was allowed to recite from memory all of those things that he had heard from the Buddha, and maybe even some that he hadn't heard directly, but he heard from others before he became the attendant of the Buddha. Ananda was the Buddha's attendant, right? So usually in the sutras at the beginning, when they say, thus did I hear at one time, that's the phrase that Ananda used to indicate that he'd heard, Now he's going to tell you what he heard from the Buddha, right? So the teaching is both the verbal and realized doctrine. The foe destroyers, the arhats, such as Kashapya, Upali, Ananda, the 16 elders, the 16 arhats, and the foe destroyers present during the collection of the words are called the roots of the teaching. So that's what's meant here in this verse from Shantideva. It says the root of the teaching is the monk. How did Jimpa translate it? Since the true monk is the root of the Dharma. So the true monk there is referring to these arhats and so forth, because they undertook, sustained, and increased the doctrine. So you shouldn't think that it's referring to ordinary monks or counterfeit monks like myself, when it says, since the true monk is the root of the Dharma. So then the 4 lines beginning, since the true monk is the root of the Dharma, also present how a path that involves a mind infected by objectification through grasping at true existence cannot lead to nirvana. So he's only quoting one line there from that verse from Shantideva. The verse from Shantideva, I can't go back in easily in Thupten Jimpa's translation, but Jeffrey Hopkins translated it this way. The root of the teaching is monkhood, or, how did Jimpa say? The true monk is the root of the Dharma, right? Oops. There we go. The root of the teaching is the true monk, you could say. But even that is difficult. That is the achievement of arhatship, like Kashapya, Ananda, Upali, and so forth. Why are they mentioned? Because Kashapya, I think, recited much of the wisdom of the Abhidharma. Ananda recited the sutras. Upali recited all of the Buddha's teachings on Vinaya, and so forth. The root of the teaching is monkhood, or the true monk, but even that is difficult, because the true monk here is referring to these arhats. For those whose minds apprehend inherent existence, find it hard to pass away from suffering. That's verse 45 in chapter 9 of Shantideva's text. Okay, so the 4 lines beginning, since the true monk is the root of the Dharma, also present how a path that involves a mind infected by objectification through grasping a true existence cannot lead to nirvana. So Jeffrey translates that these 4 lines teach that nirvana cannot be attained by means of a path having a mode of apprehension that involves conceiving true existence. To me, that's a little simpler. That's for Shanka also not liking these, too much verbiage. Okay. Next, one reads in Shantideva, right? If one is freed through elimination of the afflictions, then it should happen immediately afterward. Okay, so again, this is an opponent in these verses. First 2 lines, sometimes Shantideva is giving the opponent's point of view, and then the second 2 lines, Shantideva answers. So the opponent says, if one is freed through elimination of the afflictions, then it should happen immediately afterwards. What is he saying? Jeffrey translates that as, through abandoning the afflictions, there is liberation. Then immediately thereafter, extinguishment would occur. That means there should be all the delusions should be ceased. So Lama Tsongkhapa continues. Here the line, if one is freed through elimination of the afflictions, that presents the opponent's position. The meaning of this line should be explained in the same sense as the line, it's through seeing the truth that one is freed. That was another verse from Shantideva. One becomes free from the afflictions through seeing the Four Noble Truths, right? In terms of the query, if one becomes free from the afflictions through the path of seeing the Four Noble Truths and their 16 aspects or 16 characteristics, such as impermanence, this is because the context here is about whether freedom from the afflictions can be attained through the path of the 16 characteristics, such as impermanence alone. Implication meaning, alone meaning, you don't have to realize emptiness of inherent existence. You just have to realize that the truth of suffering is that suffering is impermanent. It's actually suffering, that it's empty, and that it's selfless, and so forth. Without realize, the thought from the Hinayana point of view that you don't have to realize emptiness, which is your Mahayana invention, right? Actually phenomena do truly exist. Okay, this is because the context here is about whether freedom from the afflictions can be attained through the path of the 16 characteristics, such as impermanence alone. That this is clear also from the argument, it's through seeing the truths. So Jeffrey translates it a little bit differently. At this point, the debate concerns whether liberation from the afflictions can be attained by means of only the paths of the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, forgetting about emptiness, impermanence, and so forth. That this is the meaning here is also clear from the earlier debate, and Jimpa only translates one line there. It's through seeing the truths. That verse was, one is liberated through seeing the truths. What then is the use of seeing emptiness? What need of seeing emptiness? That was the opponent's position. And then Shantideva replied, Scripture says that without this path, there can be no enlightenment. Okay, so he's referring to that verse. This is so is clear from the argument in the line, it's through seeing the truths. What's he saying here? He's giving more. These are all verses from Shantideva right now, because we're talking about Shantideva also having the same view as Chandrakirti, that the hearers and solitary realizers have to realize emptiness. In view of the above, it is definitely incorrect to explain these lines as an approach whereby, while accepting that the afflictions can be eliminated through the path of the 16 characteristics, such as impermanence alone, one still maintains that this path cannot bring freedom from all suffering. So again, Thupten Jimpa's translation leaves me a little bit unclear, so I prefer Jeffrey's here. Therefore, the former passage should in no way be interpreted to mean we assert that the paths of merely the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, impermanence and so forth, can extinguish the afflictions, but they do not liberate one from all suffering. You shouldn't understand it that way. What does that mean? Say, for instance, arhats who have extinguished the afflictions by means of meditating on this Hinayana view. It's simply that, to realize the four aspects of the first noble truth, the four of the second, and so forth, the 16 aspects, without realizing emptiness, that has extinguished the afflictions, but they don't liberate one from all suffering. What's he talking about there? Jeffrey translates here. The thought of Shantideva's refutation is, the opponent maintains that a liberation extinguishing the afflictions has been attained when the afflictions that are also posited by the two hearer schools, meaning here the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, are not manifestly active due to generating in the mental continuum the paths of the Four Noble Truths. If so, then immediately after having temporarily abandoned only the manifest afflictions, a liberation extinguishing all the contaminations would be attained. How does Shimpa say this? Read again. In view of the above, it is definitely incorrect to explain these lines as an approach whereby, while accepting that the afflictions can be eliminated through the path of the 16 characteristics, impermanence and so forth, just all you need is that alone. You don't need emptiness. One still maintains that this path cannot bring freedom from all suffering. The correct meaning intended here is when those afflictions defined in common with the two Shravaka schools, the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, temporarily cease to manifest for some practitioners because they generated the path of the Four Noble Truths and the 16 characteristics described above. If this were to truly constitute freedom from the afflictions, then such persons should attain total cessation of all contaminations immediately after such a temporary elimination of the manifest afflictions. However, such is not the case. This is how the opponent's position is refuted here, that such a consequence cannot be accepted as explained in the following. Though they possess no afflictions, one sees in them the potency of karma. So this is another quotation from Bodhisattva Charyavatara. This is verse 46. Though manifest afflictions are temporarily absent, they are seen to have rebirth by the power of action. Okay. Let me just read a little bit forward and then go back to that, because starting again, the words as you're hearing this for the first time might seem, what's he talking about? So Jeffrey's translation says, though the manifest afflictions are temporarily absent, such persons are seen to have the power impelling a future rebirth through the force of contaminated action, contaminated karma. This passage should be explained in this way, and not as other commentators and some Tibetans have done, saying, though they have no afflictions, Modgalyana, you know who Modgalyana was? Karen, do you know who Modgalyana was? Shariputra and Modgalyana? David, you're in a different room than Karen, right? You can't. So who was Modgalyana? Do you know? No, the two main disciples. When you see pictures of Buddha or statues of Buddha, one side there's Shariputra, one side there's Modgalyana. Like Lama Tsongkhapa, on one side is Gyaltsab-je, one side is Kedrup-je. They say all of the manifestations of Buddha always have two main disciples. So Shariputra and Modgalyana were the two main disciples of Shakyamuni. You know who they were, right? David, do you know who Moggallana was? You don't know? Wait a second. So I'll read you a little bit.
He's
Moggallana.
Googling it. That's why it's going so slow. He's Googling it. Oh, I'm just
Who's
kidding.
Googling it?
I'm just saying. I don't know. I have to admit, I do not.
You don't know who Moggallana? Okay, so.
I hear Shariputra a lot, but I don't hear much about Moggallana.
Oh yeah, Moggallana was so Shariputra was the foremost in what? What quality? Mikhail, do you know? Richard? Foremost in wisdom, right? He's the one who interrogated Maitreya in the Heart Sutra, saying, how did the bodhisattvas, he was foremost in wisdom of the Hinayana, Shariputra. So he's asking Maitreya, how did the bodhisattvas practice the perfection of wisdom in the Heart Sutra, right? Moggallana was foremost in what? Paul, do you know?
Well, presumably method.
What is it? Psychic powers.
Psychic powers.
A little bit like K-J,
Yeah.
So there's similarity between. Anyway, so Moggallana is also called Maha Moggallana. His supranormal powers. I'm reading from the Princeton dictionary that has some mistakes, as Paul had pointed out in Prajna Karamati's Tibetan name. Moggallana's supernatural powers, unsurpassed in the world, were insufficient to overcome the law of cause and effect and the power of his own former deeds, as the famous tale of his death demonstrates. So what is this talking about? So Moggallana and Shariputra had become arhats, right? Long time ago. They were, and Shariputra was foremost in wisdom, Moggallana was foremost in psychic powers. But Moggallana, near the end of his life, through his psychic powers, he went to the various realms and saw that the followers of Buddha had been born in the upper realms as a result of their virtuous karma, and that the followers of some Jain teachers had been born in the hell realms. A group of naked Jain ascetics resented the fact that the people of the kingdom of Magadha had shifted their allegiance and patronage from them. Magadha was central India, right? Used to be that the people, were paid reverence to the Jains who were non-violent and so forth. They'd even sweep the ground so they didn't step on insects and everything. They'd shift their allegiance and patronage from them to the Buddha and his followers, and they blamed Maha Moggallana, who had reported that during his celestial and travels, he had observed deceased followers of the Buddha in the heavens and the followers of other teachers, such as the Jains, in the hells. They hired a group of bandits to assassinate Moggallana. Almost sounds like politics in America today. Okay. They hired a group of bandits to assassinate the monk Moggallana. When he discerned that they were approaching, the 84-year-old monk, that is Moggallana, made his body very tiny and escaped through the keyhole. It sounds a little bit like some of Milarepa's hiding under the begging bowl or something like that when he was trying to avoid the hailstorms and so forth. When he discerned that they were approaching, the 84-year-old monk made his body tiny and escaped through the keyhole. He eluded them in different ways for 6 days, hoping to spare them from committing the deed of immediate retribution. When we talk about the 5 heinous crimes, right? 5 heinous deeds. What is one of them is killing an arhat, right? So he was an arhat, so he wanted to prevent them from killing him, not because he was worried about himself, but because they would they would create this karma of immediate retribution. On the seventh day, however, Mahamodgalyana temporarily lost his supernormal powers. The residual karmic effect of having beaten his blind parents to death in a previous lifetime, a crime for which he had previously been reborn in hell. So he still had on his mind stream the karmic seeds of suffering. Remember when we talk about the arhats having ceased suffering and the cause of suffering, that doesn't mean that they can't suffer in this lifetime once they've become an arhat. You can still have physical suffering. He can be beaten, but his mind will be never experience any discomfort from that. You know, it's like when the Buddha had fever one time, and he was lying on a couch, and the monks were applying cold compress to him and so forth. Karen, for your migraine, maybe David could bring cold compress for you. So they asked the Buddha, how was he feeling? And he said, there are great waves of pain coursing through the Buddha's body, kind of speaking of himself in the royal third person, right? Great waves of pain coursing through the Buddha's body, but his mind is at ease, right? Is sort of like the tradition in Buddhism that even an arhat can have physical manifestations of suffering, but their mental continuum will not experience any discomfort. On the seventh day, Moggallana temporarily lost his supernormal powers. The residual karmic effect of having beaten his blind parents to death in a distant previous lifetime, a crime for which he had previously been born in hell, the bandits ultimately beat him mercilessly until his bones had been smashed to the size of grains of rice. Left for dead, Mahamoggalyana regained his powers and soared into the air and into the presence of the Buddha, where he paid his final respects and passed into nirvana at the Buddha's feet. It's my neighbor calling. There we go. Clyde. Oops. What happened? Are you still there? We still there?
Yeah,
Yes,
George.
we
Yes,
can
George.
hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd lost the picture from my screen. My neighbor was calling. Karen, you have a question?
Yes, one quick question. So we commit negative karma, we go to hell for it, but we haven't burned it off. There's still residual there, even though we're out of hell.
It can be, yes. There's still, when we talk about the four effects of karma, we talk about the maturation effect, being born in a realm, such as the hell realm, the effect similar to the act as an experience. So having killed his parents in a previous life, he could still have that as a human, had that effect still. Then the effect similar to the cause as an action. Sometimes you can have the habit energy of killing again, and then the environmental effect. Those are the four effects of karma. So even though he'd experienced one of the four karmic effects of his murder of his parents in the past, he could still experience that later. Okay.
I was just thinking that since all of us have committed all crimes just about since we've had beginningless time, I'm wondering what's going to happen to me when my killing my blind parents comes to fruition.
Yeah.
I better become an arhat soon.
Yeah. I advocate that. So let me just continue a little bit more here. So thus these lines from the Guide of the Bodhisattva's Way should be explained above. Some Indian commentaries, as well as some Tibetans, interpret these lines as follow. Although Moggallana and the Arya Angulimala and the like do not possess afflictions, one can see in them the results of karma accumulated by causing suffering when they were ordinary beings. and thus they do not attain freedom immediately. So this is a wrong interpretation. So you know who Madhyamaka is now? Who is Angulimala?
I know who it is. I know who it is. He's the guy who chopped off people's fingers. And at number 99, Buddha was supposed to be the 100th, and he failed at that one. That was Angulimala. Mala
Who's
is
saying
finger.
this? Who's saying
It's
this?
Donnie.
Oh, Donnie.
Who do
Okay.
you think it is? Donnie.
Oh, your black screen. I see. I couldn't see you there.
Sorry, I
There
was
you go.
typing, so I turned it off for a moment.
Oh, okay, Donnie. Thank you for that. Yeah, actually,
Always.
not
900,
quite
I thought it was
exactly right.
999 or 1,000.
Yeah,
It was
right.
the 1,000th finger, right?
So
Really? I thought
actually,
it was 99.
No, it was how
Whatever.
1,000.
It's still an increment of 10.
okay, so that's not exactly right, but pretty close.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So let me see. Angulimala. So Angulimala was an individual who was born at the time of the Buddha, and he had a spiritual teacher. Generally, your teacher at that time, if you were a Brahmin or something like that, they taught you the scriptures and everything. So some of the other students, Angulimala's classmates, you might say, were jealous of him, and they tried to cause the teacher to have a bad impression of Angulimala, and he became angry because of that. Let's see. I wanted to tell a little bit of this story. So his teacher, because his mind had been poisoned against Angulimala, told him that to regain his favor, the teacher's favor, he would have to collect a rosary or mala. You know mala, right? Anguli means fingers, or what is it? Thumbs, right? Thumbs. So you have to collect 1,000 thumbs, a rosary of 1,000 thumbs, and then he would be reinstated, or he would achieve liberation or something like this. So Angulimala, being under the influence of this teacher, began to start to kill people to get their thumbs, and in so doing, he created a lot of bad will. You can imagine killing people, taking their thumbs and everything. And when he was at 999, he thought to kill his mother, Tani, who was going to be the 1,000th. But the Buddha, with his clairvoyance, realized this and realized that that karma would be even heavier than killing all these other 999 because, of the actions of immediate retribution. Killing your mother and father are actions of immediate retribution. So the Buddha appeared, and the Buddha, sort of seduced. He told Angulimala to stop, and the Buddha started to walk away, looking very slowly, walking. And Angulimala was running; he couldn't catch up with him. And the Buddha said, you should stop killing." And Angulimala became subdued by the Buddha and took the teachings, and in that lifetime even became an arhat, right? Like Moggallana, became an arhat. But because of his former misdeeds, I'm reading from the Princeton Dictionary of Buddhism again, because of his former misdeeds, even after he was ordained as a monk and became an arhat, Angulimala still had to endure the hatred of the society he used to terrorize, sometimes suffering frightful beatings. The Buddha explained that the physical pain he suffered was a consequence of his violent past, and that he should endure it with equanimity. This is what I told Karen when she told me about her migraine at the beginning of the class. Okay. His fate illustrates an important point in the theory of karma. That is, even a noble one, even an Arya or an Arhat who has overcome all prospect of future rebirths, an arhat, they won't be reborn in cyclic existence again due to contaminated karma. And who is certain to enter nirvana at death, they can still experience physical but not mental pain in their last lifetime as a result of their past deeds. Okay, so when it's talking about, what was it here? This interpretation is incorrect, Lama Tsongkhapa says. Here, the potency to produce suffering within this lifetime is not the issue. Arhats can experience suffering, physical suffering within this lifetime. It is the potency of karma to propel future rebirths that is stopped. Right? There is no true freedom if this has not ceased. This is how the texts should be explained. Okay.
Did he not realize he could have gotten the thumbs without killing the people?
You mean kind of like the Yakuza? I've seen some Yakuza movies recently where if you displease the head honcho, you have a knife and you have...
What's a Yakuza movie? I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
Yakuza is a Japanese kind of
mafia.
I'll look it up. And I refuse to say Google. I will research it.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Donna. Yeah, thank you. So, what have we said here? What have we gotten to? So we've told about the reasonings that Chandrakirti himself used to prove to us that hearers and solitary realizers must realize emptiness. It'd be good for you to review that. Then we've gone into the arguments of Shantideva and showing various sources why the hearers and solitary realizers must realize emptiness. So that's where we're going to stop now. We're going to continue again in when? Who knows? January what? Sheila, when's our next?
January 14th is when we start again.
January 14th.
Do we have to re-register then?
Yes.
We
Yes.
do?
You need to register again. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So hopefully you can finish this section of Shantideva on your own. We will go over that when we come back on the 14th. So you have a little vacation now, for Christmas, New Year, and then a couple of weeks to recuperate from overdoing it on New Year's Eve. And we'll start on the 14th. Any last questions? Any other questions that you have? Who have I not called on? Richard, Diana, you have any questions? I know you don't like me to ask you questions, but do you have any question that you've been? No? Okay. Mikhail, Violet in Singapore. Do you have any questions? No? I noticed Donnie's pronouns seem to be royal, we. Are those your pronouns?
You know me, always snarky. Woke is not me.
Diana's pronouns are she, her, she, her.
I know. I wrote her a note. I wrote her a note about that. She has a double.
What are Musk's pronouns? Did you see?
I have no idea. Probably XYZ or something like that.
What did he put? My pronouns are prosecute Fauci or something like that.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah. Gotta laugh, man. I laughed at it.
Okay. So Rachel, do you have any question? You're okay?
So collecting body parts.
Sorry, no, Rachel?
I don't have questions. It's just interesting how the mind gets turned around by all the verbiage, like you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this section is not found. The section in Chandrakirti talking about the hearers and solitary realizers realizing emptiness. Quite short. Lama Tsongkhapa is elaborating on that, giving many other reasons, because it was not the understanding of the Hinayana systems, the Vaibhashika and Sautratikas, that hearers and solitary realizers realized emptiness. In fact, their position was that emptiness was wrong. Phenomena did truly exist. And the Chittamatra system generally said that phenomena did inherently exist. So it's the Prasangika position, which is accepted by most Tibetan traditions today, the Nyingma, the Sakya, the Kagyu, and certainly the Gelugpa, that the hearers and solitary realizers have to realize emptiness. But that's, if you were to read the Hinayana scriptures, the Pali Canon, you won't find anything there that says that they realize the emptiness of inherent existence. Okay, yeah, Shankar.
I was just going to mention, regarding this thing about, not your afflictions, not you only being subdued as you go up the, you're using the mundane path,
right?
And so forth and so on, kind of remind, I used to, when I was a kid, growing up in India, I used to read the Mahabharata, which is this famous epic, right? Indian epic. And I'd sometimes read it in Sanskrit. And there are many instances, and I always wondered about this. There are many instances of like some great rishi or maharishi in the forest, in some formless concentration, right?
Right.
And some poor soul comes up and disturbs him, and he gets out of his concentration and smites him, like he would curse him, right?
Right.
And as you mentioned one time, like, if a maharishi curses you, it's going to happen, right? So, he would curse him that he could never have children. He would never he would be dead if he had sex with anybody, blah, blah, blah. So the guy had to be celibate, all kinds of things. And it made you wonder, like, how could, I remember thinking this, how could these guys be so high up there if they're so easily disturbed,
Right. So their afflictions were subdued when they're in concentration. But as I mentioned before, when your concentration begins to lessen after some time, and there are causes, objects of your delusions in front of you, an attractive person or something that's displeasing, it can cause attachment or anger and so forth to rise because the delusions had not been ceased from the very root. It only subdued them, the seeds of them were still there, and when the right conditions arise, they can arise again. So that's, for us, that's important to know. Sean.
When you were talking about Ananda being able to recite from memory all that stuff, was that ability gained from his realization of emptiness?
No, I think he knew. I don't believe so. I think he had the ability, he had a very good memory anyway, and he was with the Buddha all the time. And because of serving the Buddha, it's kind of like guru devotion. He accumulated so much merit, that he was able to remember and recite from memory all of the discourses that he'd heard, and even some that he may not have heard directly from the Buddha, but he heard from other people who heard it from the Buddha. So yeah, that's kind of like a special quality. Of course, the monks, the monastics at that time, the monks and nuns, as there were not many written books, there were some things that were written, and the Buddha even alludes to writing things. Generally, they transmitted the teachings through having heard something, remembered it, rehearsed it again and again. What do you call it when you go over like the Gettysburg Address or something like this? What is that called? Rehearsing it or something, so that it's ingrained in your memory, and then you recite it to others. So that was the common way that the monks and the nuns transmitted the teachings. They didn't write them down, they recited them from memory. So Ananda had a very extensive history with the Buddha for so many years, and heard so many of the discourses.
Isn't that, but couldn't you argue? I'm just being the devil's advocate or whatever. I'm being the debater here. Couldn't you argue that like there are even modern instances of I'm a musician, so I know like like of people, for example, who hear a piece of music once and they can play it from memory. Years later, right?
Yeah.
So
Mozart,
isn't
yeah.
that that's an example of ananda-like ability without guru devotion, right?
Right. And there's obviously some special karmic causes for those individuals that can remember everything. There are some individuals, I can't remember what it's called, that remember everything that happened to them this lifetime.
Like photographic memory, you mean, something like that?
Yeah, there's you'll know there's some people, I can't remember what it's called, something kind of not photographic memory, but
it's eidetic narrative memory.
Eidetic narrative memory. There we go. Yeah, there's some, I think, doesn't Leslie Stahl have that? Isn't she have that also? There were some prominent people that had that kind of ability. Anyway, let's leave that aside. I want to thank you for participating. I look forward to continuing if I'm still alive and you're still alive on January 14th. Let's put up the dedication prayers.
Please, George, still be alive and come back and teach us as much as possible for as long as possible.
Okay, I'll try my best.
He told me he was going to live to be 83.
That's what
we believe you're a true monk, Venerable George. So we know that you can control when you die.
Love you.
Well, you're grasping at straws there. Okay,
I keep coming back.
Please keep teaching us. Please keep teaching us.
Thank you. So dedication prayer. So remember, at the beginning, we try to set a special motivation as an impetus. We had motivation during the teachings also, but the most important thing is that we tried to set a bodhicitta motivation at the beginning. So we've undoubtedly created so much merit this period that compared to ordinary people in the world, they may never have accumulated in their whole lifetime as much merit as you accumulated during this session. If you would, try to develop a bodhicitta motivation. So now we're going to dedicate those merits so that they are not expended in ordinary, worldly pleasures in future lives. We're going to dedicate them like with your income tax that you get at the end of the year. You say, I'm dedicating it to Raffaello and his education, or I'm going to dedicate it to this or that. So due to the merits, due to the virtues, due to these virtues, gewadi, due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception, each and every migrator, even your enemies, into that enlightened state. May the supreme, precious bodhicitta, Jangchub Semchok Rinpoche, that has not arisen, arise and grow. So that which you have not yet accomplished, the extra thoughts to achieve enlightenment for the sake of others. You may have compassion and empathy and so forth, but may the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow in my continuum, and may that which has arisen, what little bits that I may have, may it not diminish, but increase more and more due to these merits. And then long life prayer for Lama Sopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the Muni's moral code, serving as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine. So sustaining, preserving have to do with what we were talking about before, upholding the verbal and realizational doctrine, and spreading, through your teachings, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. and to all our spiritual friends, Dalai Lama and others, you who are eyes for me to view all the infinite scriptures, you are the supreme gateways of the fortunate traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by love and compassion. All illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. So again, thank you for your patience and perseverance. Share with others that missed. I think Snehi and Jennifer will have a chance to catch up in this period of time. Look forward to seeing you, and have a happy Merry Christmas. I have to say that in case Trump would, or Fox News would say I didn't say Merry Christmas. I'm a Buddhist or something like that. Have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and see you in January. Take care.
Thank you,
so
Venerable
much,
George.
Thank you,
George.
Venerable George. Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. See you in
Thank you,
January.
And if you're gonna
Merry
give donations,
Christmas.
do it tomorrow. Million
What'd you
times
say?
merits, tens
Oh,
of millions.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you better
Or you can do it even-
100,000 between
or-
now and next time we meet. 100,000.
Well, you can
Just
also
kidding.
do it now, because you can
You
also do it now
can.
because it's already Lama Tsongkhapa Day in India, right? And Chudin Rinpoche always said
Oh, right.
that you do it by Indian time, right? You do all these things in
Okay.
Indian time.
Well, you know what? It's always time to do it now. Hey, I love
Yeah.
you guys. Thank